It was another great attendance year for the State Fair and the Minnesota House of Representatives booth at the Great Minnesota Get-Together. Thousands of fairgoers shared their opinions by taking the annual legislative opinion poll. What did you think of the poll this year?
You know, I thought it was right on. It was very specific, and it really hit the points of things I've been thinking about at home.
I like the poll. I like the questions that are on it.
Conducted by the nonpartisan House Public Information Services Office, the 12-question survey let poll takers chime in on legislative topics and issues that have been recently addressed or could be in the upcoming session. Here are the results of the 2019 survey. The first question we asked fairgoers: should Minnesota residents be required to provide proof of citizenship or lawful presence in the country to obtain a state driver's license or identification card? During the 2019 legislative session, House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler sponsored the so-called Driver's Licenses for All proposal that would allow Minnesotans to obtain a state driver's license or identification card without having to provide proof of legal residence. Supporters say this would make Minnesota's roads safer by allowing undocumented immigrants to drive legally and obtain insurance. Opponents say the proposal would grant special privileges and encourage illegal immigration. Here's what poll takers thought of the proposal. Question 2. School districts are prohibited by state statute from beginning classes before Labor Day. Should that prohibition be removed? The question was based on Representative Cheryl Joachim's proposal that would repeal a state law which requires, with some exceptions, that Minnesota school districts wait until after Labor Day each year to begin classes. Supporters say allowing all school districts the option of beginning classes earlier would provide students more time to prepare for standardized testing. Others countered that starting school before Labor Day would significantly hurt some businesses by further shortening what is an already brief summer tourism season. Here's what poll takers thought. The third question we asked fairgoers: should criminal background checks be required on all gun sales, including private transactions and at gun shows? Several firearm regulation proposals were debated during the 2019 session, with emotional debate coming from both sides of the issue. One of the first bills introduced last session was House File 8, that would, in part, require buyer background checks for each transfer of a firearm in the state, with some exceptions. Representative Dave Pinto, the bill sponsor, said it's needed to help reduce gun violence by keeping firearms out of the hands of disturbed and dangerous people. Opponents say potential new regulations would infringe on constitutional rights by making it easier to take away firearms without due process. Many poll takers agreed with Representative Pinto. While House File 8 failed to become law, it's almost certain the debate over firearm regulation will continue in 2020. Question 4. Should the state provide a tax credit for donations that fund scholarships to private K-12 schools? Representative Ron Krisha sponsors a proposal that would allow a tax credit for donations that fund scholarships to private K-12 schools. Advocates say the proposal could help close the achievement gap by providing scholarships that might help some low or middle income students attend private schools. But others say new measures to fund private schools are a mistake when public schools are underfunded. Here's how poll takers saw it. Question 5. Should high school students be required to take a class in personal finance, even if it means they have to give up another elective or post-secondary enrollment course option? This question stems from a proposal introduced last session by Representative Kali Herr that would require high school students to pass a one-semester class in personal finance in order to graduate. Some school administrators shared their concern with the proposal, saying that the potential mandate could prevent students from taking other elective classes. Poll takers weighed in and agreed with Representative Herr's proposal. The bill was in the omnibus House K-12 education policy bill, but left out of the final education deal. The sixth question we asked poll takers: should the state ban abortions for women who are more than 20 weeks into their pregnancy? The question stems from a bill sponsored by Representative Peggy Scott. House File 1312 would ban abortions at 20 weeks after fertilization, except in the cases of a medical emergency. The proposal received a hearing in the House, and a similar proposal was approved by 2 Senate committees. Supporters of the ban say fetuses can feel pain 20 weeks into a pregnancy and deserve protection, while opponents say the bill would take away a woman's right to choose and is part of an attempt to eventually make all abortions illegal. Question 7 is one that we have asked in the past, and with more and more states making it legal, we again asked fairgoers: should Minnesota allow the recreational use of marijuana for those age 21 and over? 11 states and Canada have legalized the use of recreational marijuana, and while Minnesota has made some forms of medical cannabis legal, the state still bans recreational use. Last year, roughly 56% of poll takers were in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana use, with nearly 40% opposed. Here's how poll takers felt this time around. Transportation funding is a top legislative issue each session, and most legislators agree that more money is needed. The disagreements begin with how to come up with the additional funding and what it should be spent on. Question 8 asked poll takers, would you support a quarter-cent sales tax increase in the 7-county Twin Cities metropolitan area to fund transit improvements and expansion? A $6.7 billion transportation finance law was agreed to in 2019, but it did not include the kind of dedicated funding source that many say is necessary to pay for transportation maintenance and improvements on an ongoing basis. Question 9. Should the state create an insurance program to provide workers with up to 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave to be funded by a new tax on employers and employees? Paid family medical leave was one of the top priorities for House DFLers last session. Sponsored by Representative Lori Halverson, House File 5 would have established a state-run insurance program to partially reimburse the wages lost when a person takes leave from work to address a family or medical issue. Supporters see the proposal as a lifeline for employees that can't afford to take unpaid leave from work to care for a loved one or other medical issue. Others contend an additional tax would be harmful for struggling businesses or businesses located in rural areas. Here's how poll takers felt about the issue. Question 10. A person convicted of a felony is not eligible to vote while serving any part of their sentence, including time in a correctional facility and while on probation, parole, or other supervised release. Should the law be changed so a person convicted of a felony regains their right to vote immediately upon release from a correctional facility? Supporters say restoring a felon's voting rights upon release from confinement helps them better reintegrate and feel more invested in society, making them less likely to reoffend and return to prison. Not everyone agrees. When a proposal was introduced last session that would restore the voting rights of felons when they're released from prison, some argued that it wouldn't necessarily reduce recidivism and that they preferred to focus on victims of the crime. When we asked fairgoers a similar question in 2014, roughly 47% of poll takers said no, while nearly 44% said yes. Here's what poll takers thought of the idea in 2019. A bill that would ban the controversial practice of conversion therapy for adults was introduced last session. Sponsored by Representative Hunter Cantrell, House File 12 sought to prohibit treatment for sexual orientation or gender identity. Question 11 asked poll takers, should Minnesota ban conversion therapy for vulnerable adults and those under the age of 18 by prohibiting mental health practitioners or professionals from seeking to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity? During a February hearing, officials from several mental health organizations testified that attempts to, quote, treat sexual orientation and gender identity do nothing but lead to problems that can include anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and suicide. Others, however, testified they benefited from conversion therapy, and opponents also voiced concerns the bill would come between counselors and their clients, violating their First Amendment rights. The final question on this year's poll asked fairgoers, should elementary school students be required to learn cursive writing? Many of us grew up with cursive handwriting, but with the technology today, it's no longer a priority for many of the state's school districts. While some may feel that cursive handwriting is outdated, others think it is a useful skill and that learning how to write in cursive increases a child's comprehension. Here's how poll takers felt about it. Thank you for taking the Minnesota House of Representatives annual legislative opinion poll. We hope to see you next year at the fair.